So a few days ago, I participated in the Ludum Dare Jam, which is one of the biggest game jams in the world. For the Ludum Dare Jam, you have the choice of either participating in the compo or the regular jam. The jam is a more laid-back game developing experience where you can work with a team and get 3 days to make your game, while the compo is only for people who want to feel cool and challenge themselves a bit more by only getting 2 days to work on their game, not being allowed to work in a team, and needing to make all the art, assets, code, and everything else during the jam. Now I know what you're thinking, didn't you already do this? My answer is, why did you watch that video in the first place? Listen to that audio, it sounds like I'm underwater, does this seem high quality to you? For this jam, the theme was unstable, which means that any of my games should already work pretty well for it, but I wanted to feel special and participate in the compo, so I guess I'll make a new game for it. Every Ludum Dare event, there's a bunch of special offers and deals like being able to use Gdevelop for free or this thing. But this time the event was sponsored by Yo-Yo Games, the only games company that doesn't make games. Hey, we need a new name for a soda company, got any ideas? Water Incorporated. Because of this, they decided to allow anyone to export their Ludum Dare games made in Game Maker for free. So despite not having any background in Game Maker Studio, I thought, might as well. So a few days before the jam started, I downloaded GMS to start learning to use the engine a bit. The first thing I did was follow a tutorial for their visual scripting system to make some infinite platformer game. Visual scripting is definitely the most over-marketed feature of Game Maker Studio 2, and I can kinda see why. It is just as powerful as their text-based programming language, Game Maker language. Even I could have thought of a better name. But rather than being text, it's blocks that you connect together. Visual scripting is definitely really cool, but I'm not a big fan. I'm just so used to typing code that for me, connecting blocks together just feels slow, but it's definitely a great way to get into game development. I did about half the tutorial, then I moved on to a tutorial for GML because I was tired of just using my mouse and really wanted to get some use out of this keyboard. It was expensive. The GML tutorial I really liked. GML is built really well into the engine and it's really fun to use since a lot of stuff just works. So about an hour later, I had a platformer and a basic understanding of how the engine worked. When I heard the theme, Unstable, the first thing I thought of was my code, and that's when I knew exactly what I'd make my game about. Now I would normally just explain my game idea to you, but I made a little slideshow when I was planning it I think I should show you instead. So take a seat, get your pencil out, and be ready to take some notes on how a professional makes video games. So in this game you control a debugger, this little guy who's meant to look like some computer chip thing. As pointed out here, he has legs. Those are used to walk around. Player controls like your average platformer player, but they can change their gravity by stepping into these funny gravity fields. This is an enemy. It's bad code that's been leaking data, ruining your program, and freezing your gamer PCs. You have to report it to whoever is programming this by going up to each piece of bad code and touching it. Once they're recorded, they start attacking and shooting glitch pellets. Yeah. And finally, once you report the code, you have to go back to the start of the level to exit. Once I had the planning done, it was time to start actually working on the game. I started off with making a very professional looking temporary player sprite that can compare to the likes of Celeste and Fortnite Battle Royale. Then, once I had this beautiful player sprite, I needed to make it actually do stuff because right now it's pretty boring. So I started programming the same kind of platformer logic I made before with some changes so the player can have some extra moves. I wanted to make it so rather than the player instantly stopping when you let go, it would gradually slow down, so I tried to code my own logic for that, and somehow failed miserably. Then I realized, maybe the game engine with a bunch of extra built-in features has an alert function like everything else does, and just use that instead. Once I had that set up, I also set up the gravity because, yeah, that's pretty important for a platformer. And same with jumping and full collision with the walls. It's not that interesting. You can only make this stuff so entertaining. Once I had that all set up, I made a better player sprite because I like to work on games that actually look good, and even the temporary player sprite can't distract from this. once I finished, I ended up with this. So I made a walking animation and an idle one with it. Then I also made the computer bug, which I didn't originally plan on looking like this, but I liked the design in the PowerPoint too much. I made the player flip around when he changed directions, but that screwed with the collisions and I didn't feel like working out a better way to deal with it when I only had 2 days to work on it, but I did keep the flipping for the code bug since the shape of their collision isn't that important. When you touch the enemy, I wanted it to play an animation when it switches to angry mode, and in the code you can just type the name of a file. I can just type sprite index equals in the sprite name and it just works. Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to think about what could have been. I'm of course referring to the Ludum Dare themes that we voted on that didn't quite make the cut for one reason or another. I started off this second day by making the enemy bullets and setting up the health system. Did I make a death system yet? Nope, that's a problem for future me. In reality, it wasn't that bad. All I had to do was... Then I also made the exit sprite, which turned into this. The door shown on it opens when you finish the level, but I've only now realized how small and unnoticeable it is. Then I set it up with some code that I think is pretty smart and well made, which are both things I never thought I'd be saying about my code. Because I put all the enemies on their own layer, it gets the amount of objects in that layer and sets a variable to the amount of them. Then when an enemy gets enabled, it removes one from the list, and finally once it reaches 0, it opens the unnoticeable door. I also set up this neat dashing mechanic which takes the player's speed, and if it's over a certain value, it spawns a bunch of dummy clones of the player that fade away. After trying to make my own level system and realizing I can just use Game Maker's room system for it, I set up a tile map and started making levels. Few levels in, I remembered that inverse gravity thing, so I made a pixel orange, threw in some code, and left it like that. You weren't meant to see this part. Once I was done with the levels, I set up some sound effects and music because while this may look good, it's not really that fun to play a game with no sound. That's right, deaf people can't enjoy video games. Then I finished it off with some button icons to teach you how to play, an actual name for the game, and a title screen. What's next? Compiler? Now it's the part where it all went wrong. Like, really wrong. When exporting the game, you simply need to click the build button and pick how you want it built. On Windows. If you want to export to macOS, you need to have an Apple developer license. The kind that costs $100 a year. And I happen to not have that. While I could try exporting to web and letting people play like that, I don't think it's a very good idea because of this. I mean, it's definitely playable, but I can't say any more than that about it. I decided to just keep it safe and stick with the Windows export and the source code. The source code is also required for compo games anyway, so it didn't make much of a difference. I set up an itch page, Ludum Dare page, and the game was done. For some reason, people were really impressed by the fact that I made this in 2 days, so that's fun. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. According to YouTube statistics, only 100% of people who watch my videos exist. If you don't... How? Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a couple of court hearings with my name on it because apparently calling a soda company Water Incorporated is false advertising. Water is literally incorporated in the recipes of all the soda. Well, this will be my first ever lawsuit, so wish me luck.